The stars had always been cold and silent, but for Captain Daniel Hayes, they held secrets that the galaxy had long forgotten. He stood on the bridge of the USS Resolute, watching the endless darkness through the main viewport. His ship drifted between two dead stars, invisible to every sensor ever created by alien hands. 300 years of hiding had taught humanity many things, and the first lesson was simple: never be seen until you are ready. Daniel was 62 years old, though the treatments kept him looking 40. His hair had turned gray at the temples, and his eyes carried the weight of too many hard decisions. He had commanded the Resolute for 20 years, watching alien empires grow fat and lazy while humanity waited in the shadows. Every day felt like holding his breath. Every night brought dreams of burning ships and screaming colonists stopped behind him. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Morgan worked at the tactical station. She was younger than him by 2 decades, with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun and a face that rarely showed emotion. She had been born on one of the hidden colonies, raised on stories of the betrayal. Her hatred for the Galactic Concord burned cold and patient, the most dangerous kind. The Galactic Concord ruled 12,000 star systems with absolute authority. 12 species had formed an alliance 100,000 years ago, and they believed themselves the masters of all creation. When humanity first reached the stars 3 centuries past, they sent diplomats with open hands and hopeful hearts. The Concord answered with weapons fire. The Valorian Dominion led the attack. They were tall creatures with gray skin and 4 arms, their society built on conquest and slavery. They destroyed the human diplomatic fleet in minutes, then followed the ships back to find Earth's colonies. 2 worlds fell before humanity understood what was happening. Millions were taken as slaves. Millions more died in the bombardment. Earth itself was too far away to reach quickly, hidden on the edge of the galaxy. The Concord declared humans a minor pest and sent a small fleet to finish the job. That fleet never returned. The Concord sent a larger fleet. That one vanished too. After the 5th fleet disappeared without a trace, the Concord decided that humans must have destroyed themselves in desperation. They celebrated the extinction of another primitive species and divided Earth's former territories among themselves. They never thought to look deeper. They never imagined that humanity had simply learned to hide. Daniel turned from the viewport as new data appeared on the main screen. A Concord communication relay had been intercepted, decoded by the quantum processors that human engineers had spent 2 centuries perfecting. The message was simple, but it made his blood run cold. "Captain," Lisa said, her voice tight. "They found Sanctuary Prime." Sanctuary Prime was humanity's largest hidden colony, home to 4 billion people. It orbited a brown dwarf star that produced almost no light, invisible to anyone who did not know exactly where to look. For 200 years, it had been safe. Now the Concord had somehow discovered its location. Daniel read the intercepted orders carefully. The Concord Senate had voted unanimously. 12 species, 12 votes, 12 decisions to wipe out every man, woman, and child on Sanctuary Prime. The operation was scheduled to begin in 6 days. How did they find it? He asked. Lisa shook her head. Unknown. A probe might have drifted too close. A communication might have been detected. It does not matter now. She was right. The how no longer mattered. Only the what came next. Daniel pressed a button on his command chair, opening a channel to every department on the ship. "All hands, this is the captain. We have received intelligence that the Concord has discovered Sanctuary Prime. They intend to destroy it. I need all senior officers in the war room in 15 minutes. He closed the channel and looked at Lisa. Her face had not changed, but her hands had curled into fists at her sides. 300 years, she said quietly. 300 years we have waited for this. Daniel nodded. He walked to the war room with slow steps, his mind racing through calculations and contingencies. The Resolute was one of 900 warships that humanity had built in secret, hidden in shipyards carved into asteroids and buried under frozen moons. Each ship was a masterpiece of engineering, designed by humans who had never stopped innovating while the Concorde rested on stolen technology they did not understand. The senior officers gathered around the holographic table. Commander Sam Carter, the first officer, stood with his arms crossed. Chief Engineer Maria Santos had grease on her uniform and fire in her eyes. Tactical Officer Lisa Morgan took her place beside the weapons display. Security Chief Greg Palmer leaned against the wall, his hand resting on the sidearm he never removed. Daniel activated the holographic display, showing a map of Concorde space. Red dots marked the locations of human warships, hidden in dark corners throughout the galaxy. Blue dots showed Concorde fleet positions, concentrated around their core worlds. The Concorde believes we are extinct, Daniel said. They have believed this for 3 centuries. In 6 days, they will send a fleet to destroy Sanctuary Prime. We will not allow this. Commander Carter spoke first. What are our orders from High Command? Daniel allowed himself a small smile. High Command has given us authorization for Operation Sunrise. Fold the cloak. All vessels. The room went silent. Operation Sunrise had been planned for decades, refined and updated as human technology advanced. It was the moment humanity would step out of the shadows and show the galaxy what they had become. Everyone in the room had dreamed of this day. Everyone had also feared it. 900 ships against the entire Concorde, Maria said. Those are interesting odds. Our technology is 3 centuries ahead of theirs, Lisa replied. They have never improved what they stole from the precursors. We have built everything ourselves. Their shields cannot stop our weapons. Their sensors cannot see our ships until we want them to. Their engines cannot match our speed. Greg Palmer pushed off from the wall. And their soldiers cannot match ours. I have trained for this my entire life. My parents trained for it. My grandparents trained for it. We are ready. Daniel looked at each of them in turn. These were good people. They had sacrificed everything, given up normal lives to serve in a fleet that might never fight. Now the moment had arrived, and he saw no fear in their eyes. Only determination. He opened a fleet-wide channel, connecting to all 900 ships scattered across the galaxy. Captains and crew members stopped what they were doing, waiting for his words. All vessels, this is Captain Hayes of the USS Resolute. Authorization code Omega 77. Operation Sunrise is a go. I repeat, Operation Sunrise is a go. Proceed to your assigned coordinates and await my signal. He paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. For 300 years, we have watched from the darkness. We have learned. We have built. We have prepared. The Concorde believes they killed us long ago. Today, we remind them that humanity does not die easily. We do not forgive. We do not forget. And we are coming. He closed the channel and turned to Lisa. Prepare to decloak on my command. The stars had always been cold and silent, but the silence was about to end. Ambassador Kethra of the Valorian Dominion stood before the Concorde Senate with all 4 arms raised in triumph. Her gray skin gleamed under the artificial lights, and her sharp teeth showed in what her species considered a smile. Around her, representatives of 11 other species listened as she spoke of glory and destiny. The human infestation has been found at last, she announced. Our scouts have located their final hiding place. In 6 days, we shall burn it clean and end their miserable existence forever. The Concorde's victory will be complete. The Senate chamber erupted in approval. Clicking sounds came from the insectoid Kreth. Deep rumbles emerged from the massive Golast delegates. High-pitched whistles rose from the small but vicious Fenari. 12 species, united in their hatred of the primitives who had dared to resist. High Admiral Zornak of the Valorian fleet stood at attention behind Kethra. He was old even by his species' standards, with scars across his face from battles fought long ago. He had commanded the original attack on the human colonies 3 centuries past. The memory still brought him pleasure. A junior officer rushed into the chamber, his movements frantic. He whispered something to Zornak, and the Admiral's confident expression shifted to confusion. "What do you mean, appeared?" Zornak demanded aloud. The junior officer pulled up a holographic display. It showed a tactical map of Concord space, and red warning symbols had begun appearing across it. 1, then 5, then 20, then hundreds. Kethra turned from her speech. "What is happening?" Zornak stared at the display with growing horror. "Ships, human ships. They are appearing everywhere." The Senate chamber fell silent. The clicking and rumbling and whistling stopped. Every eye turned to the expanding map of red symbols. "That is impossible," a Fenari delegate squeaked. "Humans are extinct. They have been extinct for 300 years. The display updated again. 347 human warships had now appeared simultaneously across Concord space. They hung in orbit above colony worlds and trade stations and military bases. They simply waited, making no aggressive moves, broadcasting no messages. Zornak recovered his composure quickly. "This changes nothing. Our fleets number in the millions. These primitives cannot hope to challenge us with a few hundred ships." He turned to his communications officer. "Order the second fleet to intercept the nearest human vessels. Show them the price of emerging from their holes." On the edge of Valorian territory, Commander Kevin Shaw watched the second fleet emerge from hyperspace. He stood on the bridge of the USS Harbinger, a ship smaller than his enemy's destroyers, but infinitely more dangerous. 11 other human vessels held formation around him. 12 against 2,000, his pilot muttered. "Fair fight for them." Kevin smiled. He was 35 years old, born on a station hidden inside a gas giant. He had trained for combat since he could walk. His crew had run thousands of simulations, preparing for this exact moment. The Valorian fleet arranged itself into an attack formation. Their commander broadcast on all frequencies, his voice dripping with contempt. "Human vessels, you are outnumbered and outmatched. Surrender immediately, and we may allow some of you to live as slaves. Resist, and you will be destroyed." Kevin pressed the transmit button. "Thank you for the offer. We decline." He nodded to his weapons officer. "Fire at will." The Harbinger's main cannons activated. Beams of energy that human scientists had spent decades perfecting lanced across space at velocities the Valorians could not track. The weapons passed through their shields like they were made of paper. They carved through hull plating that was supposed to withstand nuclear strikes. They did not stop until they had exited through the other side. The first Valorian battleship exploded before its crew even understood what had happened. The second and third followed within seconds. The fourth managed to fire a single volley before it too became a cloud of expanding debris. Kevin watched the destruction with cold satisfaction. "All ships, engage freely. Leave none alive." 12 human vessels danced through the Valorian formation, their engines pushing them faster than enemy targeting computers could follow. Human pilots used neural interfaces that connected their minds directly to their ships, giving them reaction times measured in microseconds. Human weapons fired in patterns calculated by artificial intelligences far beyond anything the Concorde had ever created. The battle lasted 14 minutes. When it ended, 2,000 Valorian warships had ceased to exist. Not a single human vessel had been touched. Commander Kevin Shaw transmitted a brief report to Captain Hayes aboard the Resolute. Second Fleet destroyed. No casualties on our side. Awaiting further orders. Across Concord space, similar reports began flooding in. The Kreth lost 3 fleets in the first hour. The Gorlith lost 2. The Fanari, who had voted most enthusiastically for human extinction, lost their entire home defense force to a single human destroyer that had appeared in their system. Back in the Senate chamber, Ambassador Kethro watched the casualty reports scroll across the displays. The numbers did not make sense. They could not make sense. The Concord had ruled the galaxy for 100,000 years. Their technology was the legacy of the precursors, the ancient race that had seeded life across the stars before vanishing. No one could match them. No one had ever tried. How is this possible? She whispered. High Admiral Zarnak had no answer. He stood frozen, watching his empire's military might crumble in real time. Ships that took decades to build were being destroyed in seconds. Crews that took years to train were dying before they could even report contact with the enemy. A new signal appeared on the main display. A human face looked out at the assembled Senate, calm and cold. Captain Daniel Hayes of the USS Resolute had decided it was time to speak. "Members of the Galactic Concord," he said. 300 years ago, you attacked our diplomatic fleet without provocation. You enslaved our colonies. You murdered our people. You celebrated our extinction." His eyes swept across the chamber, seeming to meet each delegate's gaze. "We were never extinct. We were watching. We were learning. We were building." Behind him, the hologram displayed a map of Concord space. Human warships now held position at every major junction, every supply line, every strategic choke point. The Concord's territory had become a trap. "You thought you were the masters of this galaxy," Daniel continued. "You thought your stolen technology made you invincible. You never bothered to improve it, to understand it, to push beyond what the precursors left behind. You grew lazy and arrogant, convinced that no one could ever challenge your rule." He leaned forward slightly. "We challenge you now. We are humanity. We do not accept slavery. We do not accept extinction. And we do not accept your right to exist as you are." Ambassador Kethra found her voice at last. "What do you want?" Daniel's expression did not change. "I want you to understand something, Ambassador. 300 years ago, we came to you with open hands. We offered peace and friendship and cooperation. You answered with murder. Today, we return your answer." The transmission ended. The Senate chamber sat in stunned silence. High Admiral Zarnak finally spoke, his voice hollow. "Prepare all remaining fleets. Every ship we have. We must stop them before they reach the core worlds." But even as he gave the order, another report arrived. A human fleet had appeared above Valaria Prime itself. The homeworld was surrounded. The reckoning had begun. Dr. Amanda Price had spent her entire life studying the enemy. She worked in a laboratory, hidden beneath the frozen surface of a moon so distant that its sun was just another star in the sky. Her walls were covered with diagrams and equations. Her tables held fragments of Concord technology, captured during the initial betrayal 3 centuries ago. And her mind held the truth that would reshape the galaxy. She was 53 years old, with silver-streaked brown hair and eyes that had grown tired from staring at screens. Her hands were steady as she assembled her final report, the one that Captain Hayes had requested before the fleet decloaked. Now the galaxy was learning what she had known for decades. The Concord had never invented anything. Amanda transmitted her findings to the USS Resolute, where it was broadcast to every human vessel and every hidden colony. The truth spread like fire through dry grass. 100,000 years ago, a species called the Precursors had ruled the galaxy. They built wonders beyond imagination, ships that could cross the stars in hours, weapons that could shatter planets, shields that could stop suns. Then they vanished, leaving only ruins and mysteries behind. The 12 species of the Concorde had stumbled upon these ruins at different times. They learned to use what they found. They learned to copy it, but they never learned to understand it. Their scientists could activate precursor machines, but they could not explain how those machines worked. Their engineers could repair precursor technology, but they could not improve upon it. For 100,000 years, the Concorde had rested on stolen power. They believed they were the masters of creation because they sat in the chairs of giants. They never thought to build their own chairs. Humanity was different. When the first human scientists examined captured Concorde technology, they did not see magic. They saw engineering. Complex engineering, certainly, but still bound by the laws of physics. They took the machines apart. They studied every component. They asked questions that no Concorde scientist had asked in millennia. Why does this work? How could it work better? What else is possible? 300 years of asking those questions had produced miracles. Amanda watched the battle reports flowing across her screen. Human weapons were not copies of precursor designs. They were entirely new creations, built from principles that the precursors themselves had never explored. Human shields did not block energy. They redirected it into other dimensions. Human engines did not push ships through space. They folded space around the ships. Human sensors did not look for light or radiation. They detected the ripples that matter made in the fabric of reality itself. The Concorde had spent 100,000 years going nowhere. Humanity had spent 300 years running as fast as possible, and they had left their enemies far behind. Captain Daniel Hayes contacted Amanda directly, his face appearing on her personal screen. Behind him, the bridge of the Resolute buzzed with activity. "Doctor, I am about to address the Concorde Senate again. I would like you to explain our technology to them. Help them understand why they have already lost." Amanda nodded. "I will join the transmission. But Daniel, you should know something else." "What is it?" "I have been analyzing Concorde population data. They kept records of every species they encountered and destroyed. In 100,000 years, they have eliminated 437 intelligent species across the galaxy. We are not the first they tried to exterminate. We are simply the first who fought back effectively." Daniel's expression hardened. 437 species. All gone, all gone. The Kreth alone are responsible for the extinction of 82 civilizations. The Valorians have erased 47. Every member of the Concorde has blood on their hands. Daniel was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but firm. "Include that information in your presentation. The galaxy should know what kind of creatures they had allowed to rule them." The transmission to the Concorde Senate began minutes later. Ambassador Kethra and the other delegates watched from their chamber, surrounded by guards who no longer believed they could provide protection. High Admiral Zornak stood rigid, his four hands clenched at his sides. Captain Hayes spoke first. "You have had time to see what our ships can do. Now you will learn why." Amanda appeared beside him on the hologram. She spoke clearly and simply, as she had practiced for years. "The Galactic Concorde has never created its own technology. Everything you use, every ship you fly, every weapon you fire, is a copy of precursor designs that are 100,000 years old. You have maintained this technology. You have even learned to reproduce it. But you have never improved it." She displayed a comparison on the screen. A Concorde weapon design sat beside a human weapon design. The differences were stark. Your plasma cannons generate temperatures of 50,000 degrees and fire at 12% the speed of light. Our beam weapons operate at 400 million degrees and reach 97% light speed. Your shields can absorb 600 terajoules of energy before failing. Ours can absorb effectively unlimited energy because we do not absorb it at all. We send it elsewhere. The Concorde delegates stared at the numbers without comprehension. They had never thought in terms of comparison. They had never needed to. Your engines can propel a battleship at 15 times the speed of light through hyperspace. Ours move at 11,000 times light speed through a form of transit you cannot detect or interrupt. Your sensors can identify a ship at 3 light hours. Ours can identify a ship at 300 light years. Ambassador Kethra interrupted. This is impossible. The precursors were the most advanced species ever to exist. Nothing could surpass them. Amanda shook her head. The precursors were remarkable, but they were not perfect. They made choices about how to approach physics and engineering. Different choices were possible. Humanity made different choices. She brought up another display, showing a timeline. 300 years ago, we were a primitive species just learning to travel between stars. Today, we are more advanced than the precursors ever were. In another 300 years, we will be beyond anything you can imagine. That is the difference between a species that innovates and a species that stagnates. High Admiral Zarnak stepped forward, his voice harsh. Words and displays mean nothing. We still have millions of ships. We still have trillions of soldiers. We will crush you through sheer numbers. Daniel answered him calmly. Your fleets have already lost over 8,000 vessels in the first day of fighting. Our losses stand at 0. If you wish to continue sending ships against us, we will continue destroying them. The mathematics are not in your favor, Admiral. Then we will fight to the last ship, Zornik snarled. The Valorian people will never surrender. I did not ask you to surrender, Daniel replied. I asked you to understand. 3 centuries ago, your people attacked innocent diplomats. You enslaved our colonies. You murdered children in their beds. You did this not because we threatened you, but because you could. Because you believed we were too weak to matter. He paused, and his eyes found Kethros. We are not weak anymore. We are not helpless anymore. And we remember everything. The transmission ended. Amanda gathered her notes and prepared for the next phase. The truth had been revealed. Now came the consequences. Across Concorde space, human warships held their positions. They did not advance. They did not attack. They simply waited, letting the truth sink in. The Concorde had ruled through fear for 100,000 years. Now they were learning what fear truly felt like. The Galactic Concorde began to fracture within hours of the truth being revealed. Species that had stood together for 100,000 years now looked at each other with suspicion and fear. The strong bonds of shared conquest had become chains that dragged them toward a common doom. The Fenari were the first to break. Their ambassador rushed to contact Captain Hayes before the day ended, offering complete surrender and cooperation. They would reveal the locations of every human still held in slavery. They would pay reparations. They would do anything to avoid the fate they had visited upon so many others. We accept your surrender, Daniel told them. Release all human prisoners immediately. Our ships will collect them. Any Fenari who harms a human from this moment forward will ensure the destruction of your species. The Fenari agreed without hesitation. Within hours, transport ships were landing on Fenari worlds, and human captives who had been born into bondage were walking free for the first time in their lives. The Kreth followed next, then the Gorlith. 3 of the 12 Concorde species chose survival over pride. They handed over their human slaves, numbering in the hundreds of thousands, and withdrew their fleets to their home systems. Human ships watched them closely but made no aggressive moves. 2 smaller species, the Veth and the Irani, attempted to flee beyond the galactic rim. They gathered their populations onto colony ships and ran for the empty darkness between galaxies. Human vessels let them go. There was no need to chase those who removed themselves from the conflict. But the Valorian Dominion made a different choice. High Admiral Zarnak stood before his people and declared that surrender was death. He broadcast his message to every Valorian world, every ship, every soldier. "The humans want revenge," he said. "They will not stop with our fleets. They will not stop with our leaders. They will destroy everything we are. Our only hope is to fight. Gather every ship. Call every reserve. We will make our stand at Valoria Prime, and we will show these primitives that we are not afraid to die." 50,000 Valorian warships answered the call. They came from every corner of Dominion space, leaving colonies undefended, abandoning outposts, stripping garrison forces to nothing. Every vessel that could fly made its way to the homeworld. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Torres watched them gather from the bridge of the USS Vengeance. He was 30 years old, with dark eyes and a scar across his jaw from a training accident. He had been born on Kepler Station, one of the colonies that the Valorians had enslaved 3 centuries ago. His parents had worked in their mines until their bodies gave out. His grandparents had died in the initial attack. The Vengeance was an assault carrier, holding 300 fighter craft and 2,000 Marines. It was one of 40 human ships that had taken position around Valoria Prime. Watching the enemy fleet assemble, Captain Hayes contacted Ryan directly. "Commander Torres, I want you to lead the assault wing. Tactical command of all fighter operations during the battle." Ryan nodded. "Understood, Captain. What are our rules of engagement?" "The Valorians have chosen to fight. They have refused surrender. They have refused negotiation. Every ship in their fleet is a valid target. Destroy them all." "Yes, sir." The battle began at dawn on Valoria Prime. Not that the time mattered in space, but the Valorians had chosen the moment for symbolic purposes. They believed that attacking with their sun behind them would provide some advantage. It did not. 50,000 Valorian ships surged forward in a massive wave. Their weapons fired in coordinated volleys, filling space with plasma and missiles and kinetic rounds. The barrage was impressive. It was also pointless. Human fighters launched from their carriers, small craft piloted by men and women whose neural interfaces made them one with their machines. They dodged through the incoming fire with perfect precision, their movements too fast for Valorian targeting systems to track. Then they struck. Ryan Torres flew at the head of the first wave. His fighter was an extension of his body, responding to his thoughts faster than any physical control could manage. He selected targets through his neural link and fired without conscious thought. Valorian destroyers exploded around him, their shields useless against weapons designed to ignore them. "All wings, maintain formation," he ordered. "Priority targets are their carriers and command ships. Cut off their head, and the body will fall." The human fighters carved through the Valorian fleet like scalpels through flesh. Behind them, the larger human warships added their own firepower. Beam weapons that burned at millions of degrees sliced through battleships. Missiles that traveled through folded space appeared inside enemy vessels before detonating. Electronic warfare systems crashed Valorian computers and left their ships blind and deaf. High Admiral Zoranak watched from the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Victory. Around him, his officers reported catastrophe after catastrophe. The fleet was dying. Ships were vanishing from the tactical display faster than the computers could update. "Focus all fire on their lead carrier," he ordered. "The one launching the fighters. Destroy it and we cut off their attack wing." Every remaining Valorian ship turned its weapons toward the USS Vengeance. Thousands of plasma bolts and missiles converged on Ryan's mothership. Commander Katie Wells, captain of the Vengeance, did not flinch. "All power to shields. Redirect incoming energy to auxiliary batteries." The barrage struck. Any Concorde vessel would have been vaporized instantly. The Vengeance absorbed the energy, channeled it through systems the Valorians could not understand, and used it to power an even more devastating counterattack. The ship's main cannon fired once, and the Eternal Victory ceased to exist. High Admiral Zornak died without understanding what had killed him. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it ended, 49,712 Valorian warships had been destroyed. Human losses were 4 fighters damaged. No fatalities. Ryan Torres landed his fighter in the Vengeance's hangar bay and sat in the cockpit for a long moment, breathing slowly. He had dreamed of this day since childhood. He had imagined it would bring him joy or satisfaction or peace. Instead, he felt empty. His communication screen lit up with Captain Hayes' face. Commander Torres. Outstanding work. Prepare your Marines for ground deployment. We are taking Valoria Prime. Yes, sir. Human dropships descended through the atmosphere of the Valorian homeworld. The ground defenses fired everything they had, but it was not enough. It was never going to be enough. Marines in powered armor walked through cities that had stood for 50,000 years, and the Valorian soldiers who tried to stop them fell like leaves. The planetary government surrendered within 6 hours. The remaining Concorde species watched the broadcasts in horror, seeing their mightiest member brought low in a single day. Captain Hayes walked through the shattered throne room of the Valorian Emperor, his boots crunching on broken glass. The Emperor himself knelt in chains before him, his forearms bound, his gray skin pale with terror. 300 years ago, Daniel said quietly, your ancestors made a choice. They chose to attack us instead of talking to us. They chose slavery instead of trade. They chose murder instead of peace. He looked down at the kneeling Emperor. Today, you face the consequences of that choice. Not because we are cruel, not because we enjoy this, but because the galaxy must learn that some choices have costs that can never be escaped. The Emperor's execution was broadcast to every world in former Concorde space. The choice had been made. The price had been paid. 1 year after the decloaking, the galaxy had become unrecognizable. The Galactic Concorde was dissolved, its name erased from official records, its symbols torn down from government buildings across 12,000 worlds. In its place rose the Terran Accords, a new framework for interstellar civilization, built on principles that the old order had never considered. No species would be enslaved. No world would be destroyed without just cause. No civilization would be exterminated for the convenience of another. These were the laws that humanity wrote into the foundation of their new order, and they enforced them with the same cold efficiency they had shown in battle. Captain Daniel Hayes retired from active service 6 months after the war ended. He had given 4 decades of his life to the fleet, watching and waiting and preparing for a day that many believed would never come. Now that day had passed, and he found himself without purpose. He returned to Sanctuary Prime, the colony world he had helped save. The planet had grown in the years since its discovery by the Concorde. Billions of people now called it home, living in cities carved into canyon walls and floating on synthetic platforms above toxic seas. It was not a beautiful world, but it was a safe one. Daniel built a small house on the edge of a cliff overlooking an acid ocean. The view was strange, but peaceful. He spent his mornings reading reports from across the galaxy and his afternoons sitting on his porch, watching the green waves crash against the rocks below. He had promised his late wife that he would build this house someday. She had died 30 years ago, killed in a training accident that should never have happened. They had never had children. He had devoted himself entirely to the fleet after her death, channeling his grief into the work of preparing humanity for war. Now the war was over, and he was alone. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Morgan took command of the USS Resolute after Daniel's retirement. She led patrols through former Concorde space, showing the flag and reminding everyone that humanity remained watchful. The job suited her. She had never wanted anything but to serve. Commander Kevin Shaw was promoted to captain and given command of a new vessel, the USS Guardian. He patrolled the border regions where former Concorde species still looked at humans with hatred in their eyes. There were incidents, small skirmishes, and assassination attempts, and occasional acts of sabotage. Kevin handled them with the same calm efficiency he had shown in battle. Dr. Amanda Price became the head of the Terran Science Council, responsible for deciding which technologies would be shared with former Concorde species and which would remain human secrets. It was a delicate balance. Too much sharing would strengthen potential enemies. Too little would breed resentment and fear. She chose to share medical technology first. Human doctors had developed treatments for diseases that had plagued other species for millennia. They offered these treatments freely, asking nothing in return. It was a small gesture, but it planted seeds of goodwill that would grow over time. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Torres left the military entirely. He had found no peace in the destruction of the Valorian fleet, no healing in the conquest of their homeworld. The ghosts of his parents still haunted his dreams, and no amount of revenge could bring them back. He settled on a small colony world at the edge of human space, where he could be alone with his thoughts. He grew vegetables in a modest garden and helped his neighbors repair their homes when storms damaged them. Some days he felt almost normal. Other days, the weight of what he had done pressed down on him until he could barely breathe. The younger species of the galaxy watched humanity with complicated emotions. The Phanari, who had surrendered quickly, became the most enthusiastic supporters of the new order. They integrated human technology into their society and sent their children to study at human universities. Within a generation, they had transformed themselves from conquered people into valued partners. The Krath and Gorlath adapted more slowly. They had been among the most aggressive members of the old Concorde, and their people struggled to accept a galaxy where they were no longer the hunters. Some embraced the change. Others retreated to their homeworlds and refused all contact with outsiders. The Valorians, who survived their empire's fall, scattered across the galaxy as refugees. Most of them settled on marginal worlds where no one else wanted to live. They kept to themselves, speaking their own language and maintaining their own customs. The hatred between them and humanity would not fade for many generations. Dr. Amanda Price addressed the first interspecies summit 1 year after the decloaking. Representatives from 47 species attended, including many who had been subjugated by the Concorde and freed by humanity. They gathered in a vast hall on Sanctuary Prime, sitting in chairs designed for a dozen different body types. Amanda stood at the podium and looked out at the assembled delegates. She was not a politician or a diplomat. She was a scientist who had spent her life understanding why things worked the way they did. But someone had to speak for humanity, and she had been chosen. "You have questions," she began. "You want to know how a species so young and small became so powerful. You want to know why we did what we did. You want to know what we intend to do next." She paused, gathering her thoughts. 300 years ago, humanity was nearly destroyed. We were attacked without warning by those who considered us beneath contempt. We lost millions of lives. We lost 2 colonies. We lost our innocence. She let the words settle before continuing. In the aftermath, we had a choice. We could accept our fate and fade into extinction, as so many species had done before us. Or we could fight. Not with the weapons we had, which were insufficient, but with the weapons we could build if we dedicated ourselves completely to survival. She gestured to the ceiling, beyond which the stars waited. "You see the results around you. Human ships patrol these space lanes. Human technology powers these lights. Human soldiers stand guard outside these doors. We have become exactly what we needed to become to survive. A delegate from one of the freed species raised a tentacle. What prevents you from becoming what the Concord was? You have the power to rule through fear, to enslave, to destroy. Why should we trust you? Amanda smiled, though there was sadness in it. You should not trust us completely. Trust must be earned over time, through actions, not promises. But I can tell you what drives humanity. It is not the desire for conquest or domination. It is the memory of what was done to us and the determination that it will never happen again, to anyone. She looked directly at the questioning delegate. The Concord saw weakness in others and exploited it. We see weakness in others and remember our own. We remember what it felt like to be helpless. We remember the ships burning and the colonies falling and the children crying. We will not allow that to happen to another species if we can prevent it. The hall fell silent. Amanda let the silence stretch for a long moment. We do not ask you to love us or admire us. We ask only that you give us the chance to prove ourselves through our actions. Watch what we do. Judge us by our deeds. And if we ever betray the principles we have proclaimed, you will be right to stand against us. She stepped back from the podium. The delegates began to talk among themselves, their voices mixing in a dozen languages. Some were skeptical. Some were hopeful. All were uncertain about what the future would bring. In the front row, Captain Daniel Hayes sat quietly, watching the proceedings. He had been invited as a guest of honor, but had refused to speak. His fighting days were over. The galaxy's future belonged to those who came after him. Above Sanctuary Prime, unseen but ever present, human warships maintained their silent vigil. They would continue to watch for as long as necessary. They would continue to protect those who could not protect themselves. The galaxy had learned its lesson. The Concord had tried to exterminate humanity and had found extinction themselves. Other species would remember this lesson for generations, perhaps forever. Humanity had survived. Humanity had prevailed. And humanity would make certain that the stars never forgot what happened when someone pushed too hard. The silence of space continued, as it always had. But now that silence held a different meaning, it was the silence of a galaxy at peace.
The ship hung in the darkness, like a sleeping god. 3,000 years it had waited above Carveth Prime, a world of purple storms and empty cities. The planet below had once been home to a great civilization. Now only ruins remained. But the ship above them had not aged a single day. Its black hull caught no light. Its weapons never fired. Its engines never moved. It simply existed, patient and eternal, as empires rose and fell beneath it. The Galactic Concord called it the Void Reaper. Commander Giles Torvon stood on the observation deck of his cruiser, the Starlight Covenant, and stared at the ancient vessel. He had seen many things in his 200 years of service. He had fought in 3 wars. He had discovered new worlds. He had watched stars die. But nothing had ever made him feel as small as this ship. The Void Reaper was enormous. It stretched across the void like a blade made of shadow. Its design was unlike anything in the known galaxy. No sharp angles, no visible weapons. Just smooth curves and strange patterns that seemed to shift when you looked at them too long. The ship was beautiful in the way that dangerous things are beautiful, like a predator sleeping in the grass. "Commander," said his adjutant, a young Velith officer named Prahl. "The expedition team is ready to board." Giles did not turn from the window. "How many attempts does this make?" "This will be the 47th official expedition, Commander, not counting the unofficial ones." 47 times the greatest minds of the Concord had tried to unlock the secrets of the Void Reaper. 47 times they had failed. The ship allowed visitors to enter. It did not harm them, but it never responded to their commands. Its systems stayed dark. Its computers stayed silent. It was like trying to wake a corpse. "Who is leading this expedition?" Giles asked. "Senior Scientist Mylis of the Velith Academy. She has assembled a team of 12 specialists from across the Concord, Velith engineers, Orani telepaths, Kreth weapons experts, even a Threll biologist in case the ship has organic components. Jael finally turned. His scales were a deep blue, marking him as a member of the warrior caste of his species. His eyes were gold and tired. And the human? Pral's thin mouth twisted. It was not quite a smile. Lieutenant Elena Vasquez, Junior Systems Analyst from Earth's Space Division. She is here because the humans demanded representation. The humans have been part of the Concord for 40 years. They have barely left their own solar system. What could they possibly contribute to this mission? Nothing, Commander. That is the point. The human is a political gesture. Earth's government wanted to feel included. Senior scientist Malus has been instructed to keep her out of the way. Jael looked back at the Void Reaper. Somewhere in its depths, answers waited. Answers about the architects, the ancient race that had built this ship and then vanished from the galaxy. Answers about where they had gone. Answers about what they had left behind. Very well, he said. Begin the boarding procedure. The shuttle crossed the void in silence. Elena Vasquez pressed her face against the small window and watched the Void Reaper grow larger. Her heart was beating fast. Her hands were sweating. She had dreamed of this moment since she was a child on Earth, reading stories about the stars. Now she was here, about to step inside the most mysterious ship in the galaxy. She was also completely terrified. The other members of the expedition sat around her, speaking in languages she did not understand. The Velith scientists talked in rapid clicks and whistles. The Orani telepaths communicated without words at all, their large eyes blinking in strange patterns. The Kreth warriors said nothing. They simply sat with their arms crossed, their massive bodies taking up 3 seats each. Elena was the smallest person on the shuttle. She was also the youngest, and she was very aware that no one wanted her here. Human! The voice came from beside her. Elena turned to find senior scientist Malus watching her with all 4 of her eyes. The Velith were tall and thin, with pale skin and too many joints in their fingers. Malus was old even by their standards. Her skin had the gray color of weathered stone. Yes, senior scientist? When we enter the ship, you will stay at the back of the group. You will not touch anything. You will not speak unless spoken to. You will record what you see and nothing more. Is this understood? Elena nodded. Yes, senior scientist. Good. Malus turned away. I do not know why your government insisted on sending you. This mission requires expertise that your species does not possess. But you are here now, so you will make yourself useful by not getting in the way. The words stung, but Elena did not argue. She knew what the other species thought of humans. Children, newcomers, a species that had only just learned to walk among the stars while others had been flying for thousands of years. Earth had joined the Galactic Concord, hoping to find allies and knowledge. Instead, they had found a universe that saw them as barely worth noticing. The shuttle docked with the Void Reaper. There was no sound, no vibration. The ancient ship accepted them without resistance, like a mouth opening to swallow something small. The airlock opened. Elena stepped into darkness. The interior of the Void Reaper was nothing like she had expected. The corridors were wide and tall, built for beings much larger than any species in the Concord. The walls were made of black metal that seemed to drink the light from their flashlights. Strange crystal tubes ran along the ceiling, filled with liquid that had stopped flowing long ago. The air was cold and still. It smelled like nothing at all. Atmospheric readings are stable, said one of the Velith engineers. Gravity is 0.9 standard. No biological hazards detected. The ship is preserving itself, Malus said. After 3,000 years, it maintains perfect environmental conditions. The technology required for this is beyond anything we possess. They moved deeper into the ship. Elena stayed at the back as ordered, her recording device capturing everything. But her eyes saw more than the camera. She noticed things the others missed. Small details. Patterns in the walls that repeated at regular intervals. Symbols carved into the metal that looked almost like writing. She wanted to stop and study them. She wanted to ask questions. But she remembered her orders and kept walking. The expedition traveled for nearly an hour before they reached the bridge. The chamber was vast. It rose above them like a cathedral, its ceiling lost in shadows. The walls curved inward, covered with more of those strange symbols. In the center of the room, rising from the floor like an altar, was a single console. It was made of the same black metal as the rest of the ship, but its surface was covered with crystals that caught the light and held it. Every flashlight in the room pointed at the console. Every eye stared at it with hunger and fear. "The command center," Milas whispered. 46 expeditions, and we have never found it before. The ship was hiding this from us. "Or waiting," said one of the Irani. Her voice was soft and strange like wind through dead leaves. "This ship thinks. It feels. I sense something sleeping in its heart. Something vast." "Can you communicate with it?" Milas asked. "I will try." The Irani stepped forward. Her name was Sarath, and she was one of the most powerful telepaths in the Concord. She had broken the minds of enemy commanders. She had reached across light years to send messages through thought alone. Now she closed her three eyes and reached out to the ship. Silence. Sarath pushed harder. Her body trembled. Sweat appeared on her pale skin. She was throwing everything she had at the consciousness inside the ship, trying to wake it, trying to make it listen. Nothing happened. Sarath opened her eyes and stumbled backward. It does not respond. The mind is there, but it refuses to speak. It is waiting for something, but not for me. "Let me try," said the lead Velith engineer. His name was Torax, and he had spent his entire life studying ancient technology. He approached the console and examined it with instruments that Elena did not recognize. Then he pressed his multi-jointed hands against its surface and began entering commands. The console stayed dark. Torax tried again. He changed his approach. He used different frequencies, different codes, different languages. He worked for 30 minutes, his movements becoming more and more frustrated. Finally, he stepped back. "The interface does not recognize Velith biology. It does not recognize any of our standard communication protocols. The system is functional. I can detect power flowing through it, but it will not respond to me." "Kreth?" Malus turned to the two massive warriors. "Your ancestors were known for taking technology by force, perhaps a more direct approach." The larger Kreth, a scarred veteran named Grath, stepped forward. He drew his fist back and struck the console with enough force to crack stone. The console did not even vibrate. Grath struck it again, and again. He hit it with his weapon. He hit it with his head. Nothing. The ancient metal absorbed every blow without damage. "The architects built to last," Malus said bitterly. "Their materials are beyond our ability to damage. We cannot force our way in." One by one, the other specialists tried. The Threll biologist attempted to analyze the ship's organic components. There were none. The Irani telepaths worked together, combining their power. Still nothing. Even the equipment they had brought failed to produce results. The Void Reaper sat in darkness, patient and silent, watching them fail. Elena stood at the back of the room and watched. She had not been asked to try anything, and she had not offered. But something was bothering her, a thought that would not go away. She looked at the console. She looked at the experts standing around it, discussing theories in languages she barely understood. She looked at the symbols on the walls, the ones that almost looked like writing, and she realized something. Everyone was trying to communicate with the ship in complex ways. They were using technology and telepathy and force. They were approaching the console as a puzzle to be solved, a lock to be picked, a code to be broken. But what if it was simpler than that? What if the ship was just waiting to be asked? Elena took a step forward before she could stop herself. "Human," Malus snapped. "Stay back. This is not your concern." "I know," Elena said, "but has anyone just tried turning it on?" Silence fell over the room. 12 aliens turned to stare at her with expressions ranging from confusion to contempt. "Turning it on?" Malus repeated. "This is not a children's toy, human. This is the most advanced technology in the galaxy. You cannot simply press a button and expect it to respond." "I understand that, but you have been trying complicated things for 3,000 years. What if the answer is simple? What if it just needs someone to touch it and ask?" "The arrogance of youth," Torax muttered. "She knows nothing of our science, so she assumes it must be easy." Let her try, Sarath said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at the Irani telepath. Her three eyes were fixed on Elena with an intensity that made the human uncomfortable. I sensed something, a connection. Let her try. Malus hesitated. She did not want to let the human touch the sacred console. She did not want to admit that her team had failed where a child might succeed. But she was also a scientist, and scientists did not ignore possibilities. Very well, she said. Touch the console, human. Show us how simple it is. Elena walked forward. Her legs felt weak. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might break her ribs. Every eye in the room was on her. Every breath was held. She felt like she was walking to her own execution. The console rose before her, covered with symbols that seemed to glow faintly in the darkness. Up close, she could see that the crystals on its surface were arranged in patterns. Not random patterns, deliberate ones, like keys on a keyboard. She reached out her hand. Her fingers touched the console, and the universe changed. Light exploded through the Void Reaper. Every dark corridor blazed with sudden brightness. Every dead system roared to life. The ship shuddered, not with damage, but with awakening, like a great beast opening its eyes after a long sleep. Elena tried to pull her hand back, but she could not move. The console was holding her in place, not with force, but with connection. She could feel the ship in her mind. It was vast. It was ancient. It was alive. And it was speaking to her. The voice filled the chamber like thunder from a clear sky. It spoke in a language that Elena did not know, but somehow understood perfectly. The words carved themselves into her thoughts with absolute clarity. Genetic signature recognized. Descendant confirmed. Welcome, child of Earth. The Void Reaper has waited 3,000 years for your arrival. The inheritance is ready to be claimed. Malus stumbled backward. Torax dropped his instruments. The Kreth warriors reached for weapons they could not use. Only Sarath remained still, her three eyes wide with understanding. Impossible, Malus whispered. It responded to her. The ship responded to the human. Query received, the voice continued. This unit will now provide historical context. Displaying archive data? The air above the console shimmered. Light gathered and formed into shapes, images. Holographic projections of things that had been dead for longer than most civilizations had existed. Elena saw ships, thousands of ships, millions of ships, a fleet that stretched across the stars like a blanket of shadow. She saw worlds being built. She saw life being seeded on empty planets. She saw a galaxy being shaped by hands that knew exactly what they were doing. And she saw the beings doing it. They were tall. They stood on two legs. They had two arms and two eyes and faces that expressed emotion in familiar ways. They were not identical to humans. They were older, more refined. Their technology was built into their bodies like a second skin, but the shape was the same. The basic design was unmistakable. The architects looked like humans. What is this? Elena breathed. Historical archive of the seeding protocol. The architects traveled the galaxy for 4 million years, creating life on suitable worlds. Each world received a unique design. Each species was given gifts to help them grow. But only one world received the original template. Only one species was given the key to the inheritance. The holographic display focused on a single world, blue and green and white, beautiful and small, and impossibly precious. Earth. Earth was the last seeding. The architects knew their time was ending. They placed their children there and left them the inheritance fleet. When the children reached the stars, the fleet would awaken. Elena stared at the image of her home world. Her thoughts were chaos. Her heart was somewhere between joy and terror. Everything she had been taught about human history was wrong. Everything the galaxy believed about humans was wrong. They were not newcomers. They were not children. They were the inheritors of the oldest civilization the universe had ever known. The architects, Malus said. Her voice was hollow. The architects were human, and they left everything to them. The holographic display shifted again. Now it showed the galaxy as it was today, with all the worlds of the Concord marked in light. And among them, hidden in the darkness between stars, were other lights. Thousands of other lights. Ships. waiting ships, ships like the Void Reaper, sleeping until the moment they were called. Inheritance fleet status, dormant, 10,000 vessels await activation. This unit is prepared to broadcast the awakening signal upon command. Elena finally managed to pull her hand away from the console. She stepped back, breathing hard, her mind reeling. The other members of the expedition were staring at her like she was a stranger, like she was a threat, like she was something they did not understand and could not control. 10,000 ships, Torax said. 10,000 ships like this one, in the hands of humans. The galaxy, Grath rumbled. The galaxy is theirs. They could conquer everything. No, Elena said. The word came out before she could think about it. No, that's not what this is for. The architects didn't leave us a weapon. They left us a responsibility. But even as she spoke, she could see the fear in their eyes. And she knew that fear would spread across the ship, across the fleet, across the entire galaxy. Everything was about to change. And Elena Vasquez, junior systems analyst from Earth, was standing at the center of it all. The chamber was silent except for the hum of the awakened ship. Elena stood before the console, surrounded by aliens who had spent their entire lives believing they understood the universe. Now that understanding was broken. Now everything they knew was wrong. Senior scientist Malus was the first to move. She stepped forward slowly, her four eyes fixed on Elena, with an expression that mixed wonder and horror in equal measure. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was barely louder than a whisper. "Show me again. Show me the architects." Elena did not know how to control the ship. She did not know how to command it. But when she thought about the architects, when she focused on her desire to see them again, the holographic display responded. Images formed in the air above the console. The ancient beings appeared once more, going about their work across the galaxy. Malus watched in silence. Her scientific mind was trying to process what she was seeing, trying to fit this new information into frameworks that were built for a different reality. The architects had been studied for thousands of years. Every species in the Concord had theories about them. Some believed they were energy beings. Others thought they were machine intelligence. A few even believed they were gods. No one had ever considered that they might be human. The genetic structure, Malus said, we have analyzed organic samples found on architect ruins across the galaxy. The DNA never matched any known species. We assumed they were too different, too advanced, too far removed from modern life. But the truth was simpler. We were looking for something alien. We never thought to compare them to humans. Because humans are nothing, Grath growled. The massive Kreth warrior had his hand on his weapon. His scales were raised in the display of aggression that his species showed before battle. Humans are weak. Humans are slow. Humans have no natural weapons, no armor, no strength. They are the least of all the species in the Concord. They cannot be the chosen ones. Chosen by whom? Sarath asked. The Irani telepath had not moved from her place near the wall. Her three eyes were still watching Elena with that strange intensity. The architects did not ask permission. They did not hold a contest. They simply selected the species they wanted to inherit their legacy, and they selected humanity. But why? Torax demanded. The Velith engineer was staring at the holographic images with something close to rage. We are older than them. We are smarter than them. Our technology was crossing the stars while humans were still living in caves. What makes them worthy of this inheritance? Query detected, the ship's voice said, accessing archived data on selection criteria. The holographic display changed again. Now it showed data streams and genetic sequences in information that Elena could not fully understand. But some of it was clear. Charts comparing different species, graphs showing potential and growth, and something labeled Adaptability Index. The architects studied all seeded species before selecting an inheritor. Many candidates were considered. The Velith possessed high intelligence but low genetic flexibility. The Kraith possessed strength but reduced capacity for cooperation. The Irani possessed mental abilities but limited physical adaptability. The display focused on a single graph. It showed a species that ranked moderate in most categories but exceptional in one, a measurement labeled Survival Persistence. Humans demonstrated the highest survival persistence of any seeded species. They adapted to extreme environments. They recovered from near-extinction events. They developed technology despite lacking natural advantages. Most importantly, they demonstrated the capacity to change their behavior based on experience. This capacity was identified as essential for responsible use of the inheritance fleet. They chose us because we are survivors, Elena said slowly. The words felt strange in her mouth. She had never thought of humanity as special. On Earth, humans had always seemed fragile compared to other animals. They had no claws, no fangs, no armor, no venom. They survived through cleverness and cooperation and sheer stubborn refusal to die. Now she understood that this was exactly why the architects had chosen them. Survivors, Grath spat. Cockroaches survive. Bacteria survive. Survival means nothing. Survival means everything, Sarah said quietly. The architects built a fleet that could conquer the galaxy. They needed to give it to someone who would not use it for conquest. Someone who understood the value of life because they had fought so hard to keep their own. This is insane, Mela said. You are suggesting that the most powerful weapons in the galaxy were given to the weakest species because they might be more responsible? That is not science. That is hope. That is faith. The architects operated on timescales that required both science and faith, the ship said. They seeded life knowing they would not survive to see it grow. They built the inheritance fleet knowing they would not be there to guide its use. They made their choice and accepted the consequences. The choice was humanity. Commander Jael's voice crackled over the communication system. Expedition team, report. What is happening on board? Our sensors are detecting massive energy signatures from the Void Reaper. The ship is fully active. Malus touched her communicator. Commander, we have made contact with the ship's systems. The human, Lieutenant Vasquez, was able to interface with the central console. The ship has provided historical data about the architects. What kind of data? Malus hesitated. How could she explain this? How could she tell the commander that everything they believed was wrong? That the mysterious ancient race was actually an earlier version of the species they had all dismissed as insignificant? Commander, I think you need to see this for yourself. The response was immediate. I am on my way. While they waited, Elena explored the console. She did not touch it again, but she studied the symbols on its surface and the patterns in its crystals. Some of them were starting to make sense to her. Not because she had learned them, but because they felt familiar, like a language she had known in a dream and forgotten upon waking. You can read it, Sarah said. The Irani had moved closer without making a sound. The script of the architects, it speaks to you. I do not know how, Elena admitted. I never studied any alien languages. I barely passed my linguistics courses at the academy. But when I look at these symbols, I understand them. Not perfectly, but enough. The connection is in your blood. The architects designed humans to interface with their technology. When you touch the console, the ship recognizes you as one of its creators. It gives you access that no other species can have. That does not seem fair? Sarath made a sound that might have been a laugh. The universe is not fair, human. The Velith did nothing to deserve their intelligence. The Kreth did nothing to deserve their strength. The Irani did nothing to deserve their telepathy. These are gifts given without reason or justice. Now you have received a gift as well. What matters is what you do with it. Elena looked around the chamber. The other expedition members were still staring at her with suspicion and fear. She understood why. If humanity now controlled the most powerful fleet in the galaxy, then every other species was at their mercy. The balance of power that had maintained peace for centuries had just been destroyed, and she was the one who had destroyed it. I did not ask for this, she said. No one asks for fate, Sarath replied. Fate simply happens. The question is whether you will rise to meet it. Commander Jael arrived 20 minutes later. He walked into the chamber with 5 armed guards, his golden eyes scanning every corner for threats. When he saw the holographic displays still floating above the console, he stopped. His scales shifted from blue to a darker shade that Elena did not recognize. Report, he said. All of it. Malus explained everything. The activation of the console, the ship's response to human touch, the historical archives showing the true nature of the architects. the existence of 10,000 sleeping vessels scattered across the galaxy, waiting to be awakened. Giles listened without interrupting. His expression did not change, but Elena could see his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides, the only sign of the storm raging inside him. 10,000 ships, he said when Malus finished, each one as powerful as this one. Possibly more powerful, Commander. The archives suggest that the Void Reaper is a scout vessel. The main fleet contains much larger ships with weapon systems that we cannot even imagine, and all of it responds only to humans. That is correct. Giles turned to Elena. She had never been the focus of such intense attention. His gold eyes seemed to look straight through her, examining her soul and finding it lacking. Lieutenant Vasquez, do you understand what you have done? I touched a console, Commander. I did not know what would happen. Ignorance does not excuse consequences. You have just given your species control over enough firepower to destroy the Concord, to conquer every world in the galaxy, to end civilizations that have existed for longer than humanity has been alive. I would never do that. Humanity would never do that. Humanity has been part of the galactic community for 40 years. We know almost nothing about you. We do not know what you are capable of. We do not know what you want. And now we must trust you with the most dangerous weapons in existence. Elena straightened her spine. She was small and young and frightened, but she refused to let this man make her feel ashamed. Commander, what happened to the species who tried to claim this ship before? The 17 civilizations you mentioned? Giles paused. They failed. The ship rejected them. Did they fail because they were weak? Or did they fail because they were not the right ones to control this power? What are you suggesting? I am suggesting that the architects were not stupid. They built technology that would last for millions of years. They planned for every possibility. They must have known that other species would try to claim the inheritance, and they designed the ships to reject anyone who was not ready for the responsibility. That is a comforting theory, but theories do not protect civilizations. No, Elena agreed. Actions do. And I am telling you, Commander, that humanity will not use this fleet for conquest. That is not who we are. You speak for all of humanity? I speak for myself, but I know my people. We have spent our entire history fighting each other, learning the hard way that war destroys more than it builds. We finally made it to the stars hoping to find something better. We are not going to ruin that by becoming tyrants. Giles stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned to his guards. Return to the shuttle. I need to contact the Concord Council. Commander, one of the guards said, should we not secure the human? If she controls the ship, then securing her will accomplish nothing except making her angry. Go. The guards left. Giles touched his communicator and stepped away to make his call in private. Elena could hear fragments of the conversation. Words like crisis and emergency session, an unprecedented threat. Each word felt like a weight being added to her shoulders. Torax approached her. The Velith engineer's anger had faded, replaced by something that looked almost like respect. How does it feel? To have the power of gods? Terrifying, Elena admitted. I keep waiting to wake up and discover this was all a dream. It is not a dream. This is real. And you must decide what to do with it. I already decided. I will not use this fleet for war. A noble sentiment. But what happens when someone else decides for you? The Kreth will not accept human supremacy. They will test you. They will attack your colonies to see if you will respond. What will you do then? Elena did not have an answer. She had thought about refusing to use the fleet for conquest. She had not thought about what would happen when others forced the issue. Could she truly keep the peace if everyone expected war? Incoming communication from Inheritance. Fleet Node 7, the ship announced. A second vessel has detected human biosigns in this sector. It is requesting permission to join the primary unit. Everyone in the chamber froze. A second vessel? Malus whispered. There is another architect ship nearby? Affirmative. Inheritance Fleet Node 7. Designation. Stormbringer is currently in dormant status in the asteroid field of the Veth system. It detected the activation of this unit and is now requesting permission to awaken. Elena felt her blood run cold. The Void Reaper had been dormant for 3,000 years. One touch from a human had woken it. Now another ship wanted to wake as well. And there were 10,000 more waiting across the galaxy. What happens if I give permission? She asked. Stormbringer will activate all systems and join this unit in formation. Combined firepower will increase by approximately 300%. 300%. And that was just one additional ship. If all 10,000 activated at once... Do not give permission, Giles said. He had finished his call and was staring at Elena with something close to fear. The Concord Council is convening an emergency session. They need time to discuss this situation. If more ships activate before they reach a decision, there will be panic. I understand, Elena said. She turned to the console, not touching it but speaking